Diced Onion, a Warrior podcast. We're your hosts, Angelo and Mike Haggerty, taking you through every episode of the incredibly great show, Warrior. Mike, we're up to episode 7 already.
Yeah, Ange, I think it's fair to say this episode, things definitely kick up a notch. I think we take it to the next level. Yeah. We're going to the next level here. I think
we certainly are, man. This is one of those episodes where your jaw drops at the end.
Yeah. This is definitely I'd say this is a transitional episode because the ante's upped in a lot of ways. We're going to cover that.
Dude, let's just get right into it because otherwise we're just going to be giving away stuff. So this episode originally aired May 19th of 2019. It's called The Tiger and the Fox. And we'll learn what that means exactly at some point during. It seems every episode does indeed reveal the title in the dialogue somewhere. Something else I've finally picked up on with this show. Opening scene, pre-credit scene. It's Mei Ling and Long Z. They're in what looks to be some sort of safe house. It's definitely not Long Z headquarters. And Long Z is lamenting his current situation.
Yeah, and we know from last week that he knows the score, and he knows what his wife is. And there's an interesting dialogue interaction between them where she says, "You're safe here," and he says, "I'm not safe anywhere."
Yeah, I thought that was very telling, that comment, because he was laying there sort of in her arms when he said that. They were in the bed, and she was assuring him everything was going to be okay. But I think that message was very clear what that meant, Mike.
You think he was trying to say that he wasn't even safe with her?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you could totally take that away from that comment. Don't you think?
That's kind of what I thought too, but I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure where his head's at this point.
Well, we do kind of know where his head's at because a week ago he did essentially spell out that he knows his days are numbered. This further cements this opening scene.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. And, although it is a safe house, you kind of get the sense that it might not be so safe.
No, I wouldn't say anywhere more safe.
That's true. This entire landscape of where the show takes place is dangerous, minefield territory in a sense, isn't it?
So I don't think there's a safe place in I don't know, maybe in Penny and Mayor Blake's house. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. Opening credits kick in at the end of that scene, and as
no pun intended,
none at all, kick in. We come back from the credits, and it looks like some sort of slave sale. And as the scene further develops, Mike, we learn that it is really a flesh trade going on here, and Atoy is there looking to buy new girls for her brothel.
Yeah, she's a savvy shopper.
She is.
She's looking over the girls, and she finds one girl who's kind of bruised up, and she doesn't really like the quality of that particular girl. I don't know what goes into that.
She actually liked the girl until she saw the bruises on her.
Right.
And she said, "What is this?" And the guy said, the purveyor of the trade there, the purveyor of the girls, said something like, "Well, it's a long trip across the salt. The guys, I can't prevent the guys from helping themselves."
No, and so she's damaged goods. So I'm wondering, my thought process here is that Atoy really just, is she concerned about the girl was assaulted, or is she just concerned about that now her profitability is reduced?
Both, absolutely, because Atoy wants quality. And she says to the guy, this doesn't happen with my quality. You don't mess with me. I'm leaving. And she gets up to leave, right? But that's when he stops her, and in a sense, all right, let me break out the good stuff. And he stops her with and brings in a different girl, one who does not look like she was abused. And he goes on to kind of spell out what her situation is, doesn't he?
Yeah, and there was sort of a similarity here too. You remember back in the episode, 2 episodes back, when they were in the out west, in that bottle episode,
right?
And Assam was talking to the waiter there, and they found out they were in your neighboring villages. But there was a similar sort of interaction here.
Oh, that's a good point. When that guy was describing to Atoy this girl's sort of backstory, whatever fishing village that she was pulled out from, Atoy, it resonated with Atoy somewhere there. There was definitely a connection. Perhaps that's even where she was from.
Yeah, they don't make that clear, and that's okay. I thought that kind of added more mystery to it, and I appreciated that. But you can see right off the bat that Atoy is kind of, I don't know if it's a sisterly or a motherly sort of connection, but you tell right away that she wants to take care of her.
Yeah, of course, especially when she finds out from this guy that she is untouched and unsoiled and she is a virgin. As he put it, she'll command a high price. And Atoy makes her, whoever was with her, hand her a bunch of money, and he announces this one's been sold. So Atoy indeed does buy this virgin girl from this character who is, I mean, as you would expect, someone who deals in flesh, selling and buying women as cattle, doesn't have a very good sort of bedside manner, does he?
No, he's not a part of the Better Business Bureau. That's for sure.
He's not a member of the local Rotary Club, that's for sure.
No, he's probably not a man of high ethics. That
No.
much is clear.
So the scene ends there with Atoy making her purchase, and we are now taken from the depths of a brothel or the depths of a skin trade transaction to an elegant dinner out between Penny and her father, Mr. Mercer. And she notices his lack of chatter during dinner, doesn't she? Something's concerning him.
Yeah. And again, Dad has some business concerns that involves Mayor Blake. And I thought there was a parallel with this scene and the previous scene, actually, as the dialogue continues, we find out, because basically we find out that Dad's on hard times again, and he's sort of saying without saying he wants Penny to sort of fix it for him. And but the only thing she can do for Mayor Blake, the thing that she doesn't want to do for Mayor Blake,
it's interesting because you backtrack for a second there, and when he explains what's concerning him, it's that Blake hasn't come through with this contract for the steel to build the railway in San Francisco, and he's getting concerned because he's pretty much mortgaged the farm on this deal. And if the deal doesn't come in soon, the factory's going to go under, the home is going to be foreclosed upon, and his ruination is a sense on the line. And when she says to her father, "I will speak to the mayor," his response was, "It's not talk that he's looking for."
Yeah.
And then that spells out what you were saying.
So yeah, he's kind of a pimp himself, actually.
He's pimping out his own daughter. He's already done so in the sense of getting her to marry him to secure that steel contract. But obviously, we have to up our ante here and give the mayor what he wants because he's still holding out. And she doesn't like it, does she? Of course.
No, because she's not a prostitute. She still thinks of herself as a good person, and she is.
Right.
And I guess you could sort of justify an arranged marriage as that was pretty much the norm of the times. Like we've said before, that marrying for love is a fairly recent concept in human history. Because back in the day, a lot of marriages were arranged for to improve a family standing or
Right.
to connect families, not just for the upper class or the royalty, but even amongst the common class. It was common.
Yeah. So this isn't that weird that they're in an arranged marriage
No.
by any stretch of the imagination. And I got to tell you, he does say to her, he is your husband.
Yeah.
And in a sense, she is. So she should be performing some wifely duties, which she's obviously been shirking for many good reasons. I'm not criticizing it, but this is how her father is seeing it. And her response was, "He's my husband, but I'm your daughter. Shame on you, Daddy."
Yeah.
She says it really like nasty. And then she leaves. She leaves him sitting there. And I got to say, kind of rightfully so. You do feel for Penny because she is getting squeezed into a corner, much like every woman on this show so far.
Yeah. Except maybe Atoy.
Yeah, except maybe Atoy. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Atoy's not taking no lip
That's true from anybody.
from anybody.
We move on to the next scene, and it's a familiar one. Young June getting some sticky with a. I got to ask you again, did women in 1878 really have bodies like this?
Well, there certainly
I was
was
very
no breast
impressed.
enhancement. There was no breast enhancement then, I don't think. So
No.
that was probably not the case.
Yeah. Well, and anyway, the girl's assets were all in order, and rightfully so that she earned the role in that scene. At the end of the scene, and they finish up rather, he gives her some kind of herbs or something for her headaches. I'm not sure what it was, maybe a powder, but he tells her take this like once a day or something, and it'll help you with your headaches. And she thanks him, and they kind of get dressed, right? And that's when young June now comes into the like main area of the brothel. He sees Atoy. He greets her. She is with the girl she just purchased, and he says, "Who's this?" And her response was something like, "Not on the menu."
Yes,
right?
not on the menu. Yeah, and again, we don't know, is this a sisterly thing or is this a business decision? Maybe I mean, because obviously she's going to want, everyone wants something out of everyone, right? I mean, ultimately we all do. And this girl at some point is going to have to earn her keep, I imagine, but not right now. She's not on the menu now.
Yeah, what's the motive for a toy? Like you said, going back to the fishing village connection, did she see something of herself in this young girl and decided
That's a
to
good
step
point.
in and say, I'm going to try to rescue her from this? And maybe she does not have any intentions of making her one of the working girls in the house. It's hard to tell, but you see immediately that there is genuine compassion on Atoy's part, because she takes the girl into like her back quarters there and she assures her of her safety. And then she even like helps her bathe. She's very caring to her. And we see the girl get very emotional from receiving this sort of tenderness in a sense. I don't think she's used to someone being kind to her.
No, her look gives the indication that she probably has had a rough life. And then again, if you've been sold into the sex trade, then yeah, odds are your life probably isn't very good.
Right. Like we can imagine that boat trip across the ocean was not good for this young girl, and Atoy recognizes that as well. And I think she's looking to soothe and take away some of her troubles. That's where the scene ends, and we move on now to another familiar sight, Bill at the bar. And he finishes his last drink, or he finishes a drink, and here comes the bartender, and he says, what can I get for you, Bill? But Bill's not quite there, is he?
No, and Bill kind of has a moment where he sees, either, depending on how you look at it, either hallucination or some sort of drunken vision, but he sees
Right.
Damon.
He sees Damon in his beaten up state, not
Yeah,
as a whole man, but like with his face all puffy and bloodied from the last time
yeah,
we saw him, right? And so
yeah,
Bill's clearly still haunted by what went down last episode.
yeah. Bill has some guilt. That much is clear. But we see that a lot in the show where people do things that they don't necessarily like doing, but kind of have to do. And I mean, at that point, look, just backtracking to last week, Leary was right. Bill, once the fight had started, there really was no going back. We see that a
Right.
lot in the show. That once you light the fuse, that's the point of no return. And not that I can ever condone violence, but I do understand in the context of the show, that's what happened.
Yeah. So Bill snaps out of his little haze for a minute there and tells the bartender, I'm good. He pays and he's on his way out. But on his way out, he kind of stops in his tracks and turns and he addresses someone, a stranger, someone we've never seen before. And he's rather stern with this guy. He takes quite a tone with him and he says, you know what? You've been staring at me all night, is what Bill essentially says to this guy, right?
Yeah, and he's kind of being coy. I think he tells him a corny joke, and then Bill says, "You've been staring at me all this time just to tell me a stupid joke." And they're kind of doing a little song and a dance. I get the feeling that this guy, this stranger to this point, is kind of feeling Bill out, trying to get a sense of who he is and what they can talk about. But we quickly find out that there is a motive, and well, again, we get our first kind of major plot point of the episode.
Yeah. And just to backtrack for a second, this guy already knows some of Bill's backstory. He tells him his name, right? He says, Hey,
Right.
Sergeant O'Hara, I'd like to buy you a drink. And Bill says, he resists. He says, I'm already drunk enough. So why don't you get to the fucking point?
Yeah, and he goes
That's where he
something
makes
like,
that bad joke. That
yes,
Tunday, Thursday, Tatterday, Tunday joke about when Irish people drink, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and
So
Bill tells him
sad,
to just get on with it, man.
sad day when he says something to the effect when an Irishman won't accept a free drink or something like that.
Not
And
a
let
world
me
I
let
want
me
to live in.
not a, yeah, that's it. And let me backtrack. I mean, what I meant before is that I know that he knows who Bill is on paper, but he doesn't get. I don't think he has a sense yet of who he is. Like you
Of
can
his
know someone's
temperament.
backstory, but you don't. You're right. You don't know his temperament or how he's going to react to whatever you bring up to him.
Yeah, I would say you're right. He's definitely taken his temperature, and he does get on with it, doesn't he? And he hands Bill a piece of paper. Turns out to be a wanted poster, and guess whose picture's on it?
It is Mr. Lee.
And that makes you think back to a few episodes back when Lee didn't want to get in that photograph when they were showing off their arrest of all the Chinese people when they made that big bust in
Right.
Chinatown. So now you kind of understand why Lee didn't want to be in that photo, because he's a wanted man. And apparently he's wanted for murder in Georgia, killing two people, according to this guy who turns out to be a bounty hunter.
But then, I have to ask, why would a wanted man, when choosing careers, choose to be in the police force?
That's a good question. One we may or may not get answered. But it is an interesting sort of juxtaposition, right? Where we now learn that an officer who we see has done probably the best policing of anyone that we've encountered in this show is indeed now wanted for murder. And as much as we know from this bounty hunter's telling, Lee shot one person and
his own family.
And cut another one. And I don't know that we know that yet here. And now he's asking Bill for his help, and he's willing to split the money with Bill, isn't he? And just to show you how much he knows of Bill's backstory, he says, I know you can use it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I kind of forgot about that. So yeah, his word is around that Bill does have a gambling issue, and we all know that if you have a gambling issue, or any sort of people are going to look for your weaknesses, and that's an entry point, I guess, for this guy. And
absolutely, Mike. This guy did his homework. He sniffed out the weak link that he could probably exploit to get to his goal, which is to collect $500, and then obviously have to split it with Bill. But doing the math that we learned in the beginning of the season, $500 is 15 grand today. So essentially it's $7,500. And that's when Bill says, I will have that drink. And he sits down. So the prospect of some big money makes Bill at least now willing to listen to what this guy has to say. And he does indeed have a seat with him.
Yeah, and now that's where they leave it very coyly. You don't know what's going to happen.
No, but it does get juicy now, because now we learn these things about Lee that you certainly did not expect. I mean, remember, you've been referring to Lee as the moral center of this whole story. So now we find out that he may not be as moral as we've come to believe to this point.
No.
Speaking of morals out of balance, we see Penny again, and it looks like she's kind of decided to help out her old man, doesn't it? She kind of is prettying herself up. She's not exactly happy with herself. You can see that too. She takes a sip of wine, all that preparation. It's not a very long scene, though. Just gives you a glimpse into what's happening in her mind.
Yeah, well, I think it was a foregone conclusion that she was going to help her family, because that seems to be her motive.
Yeah.
She is a family person. And again, chalk it up to, like we said a few minutes ago, that you do what you necessarily don't, just like O'Hara, you do what you don't necessarily want to do, but what you have to do.
And once again, you're seeing someone like Penny, who seems to have a greater moral center than many of the other characters. She's kind of up there with Lee in that sense, because she's empathetic to many different people, right? But here she is now with her own moral dilemma, and obviously going against some of her own personal morals to do what she thinks she has to and is obligated to at this point.
Yep. And it seems like she's made that decision, which I never doubted she would. She was just going to give her father some flack for it, justifiably so. Poor girl. She's got to do what she's got to do.
She's definitely in a tough spot.
Yeah.
We're back at Hopway headquarters now, and Assam comes in with the weekly pickups, and it looks like he's doing a pretty good job of it. Even Young June says something like, hey, you're starting to get the hang of this.
Yep, he's learning the hang of extortion, but that's actually not what this scene's about. It's because Assam... Well, Assam begins to ask questions and find out that,
he doesn't have to ask the questions. He asks the questions, but he asks because Young June says to him, you should get some sticky before the blood starts to spill, or something like that.
Yes.
And that's when Assam's like, well, what do you mean? What's going on? And Young June prefaces what he tells him with, I'm not supposed to say this to you, but. And then he proceeds to tell him what?
I got a secret. They're going to launch an attack on Long Z, which obviously that presents a major issue for Assam because his sister's there, and that's all he cares about.
And we've known this attack on Long Z was going to happen after the assassination attempt last week. And Father June said, I only shook his hand to say goodbye. And Long Z, knowing his days are numbered. So we all know this is going to happen, right? And Young June does say to Assam that we know where the safe house is, and we're going to make that move on Long Z. And he adds, Bolo is on the way to dice his bitch wife right now.
Which sets us up with an interesting scenario of Assam versus Bolo, which I was looking forward to that.
You can see the nervousness on Assam's face. He gets very concerned immediately when Young June tells him what the plan is, and he asks something like, well, if we know where the safe house is, why aren't we all just going in there and taking it to them? And that's when Young June responds something like not wanting to tip them off, and we're going to send a message first, and then tomorrow things are going to get interesting. And that's when we get a shot of Bolo making his way in and out of the safe house. Again, just a quick snippet of him doing his dirty work.
Yeah, and Bolo clearly is one of the best scrappers in the Hopwe.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, if you're going to send in an assassin, that's the guy you send
The
in.
yellow demon.
The yellow demon, yes. Let the yellow demon do his work.
Yeah, so that's what they do, right? The Hopwe send their yellow demon out to get Mei Ling. Assam now knows this, and he gets the hell out of there quickly and takes off to, interestingly enough, Atoy's to try to get some information from her about where the Longzhi safe house might be.
Yeah, because she's his one. She and obviously Chow are his only real confidants. All that, I guess, and his sister. So Assam has three confidants or people he can speak to freely in this. And it's Chow, obviously Atoy, and he goes to Atoy for information because we all know that she does know everyone, just like Chow. And he pries her for information, but at first she doesn't want to give it to him, and he kind of feels a little slighted by this. He feels like, yeah, he feels like, well, he says something to the effect of, I expected more out of you, or in so many words, I thought you were my friend, or something like that.
Yeah, he told her, you told me that I would need someone outside of the Tongs to trust, and I need you now for that, something like that. Up till that point, though, she had told him, hey, you can't stop what's about to happen here. Like, she's accepting whatever this war is going to be as sort of a done deal, a fait accompli, right? But he asks her one more time. He says, please, if you know anything, please tell me. Does anyone here possibly know anything? And then that's when another funny scene happens, at least to me. They barge in on a client who's obviously with one of the working girls, and he's getting some sticky, and they literally kick him right out of there.
Yeah, it struck me as kind of an interesting take on customer service, but okay.
Can I ask you a question? Was that like common back then? Because this is the second time we're seeing a guy getting kicked out of a prostitute's room while he's literally in the middle. If you look back 2 weeks ago, remember that really crass guy from the Western episode? He went upstairs and kicked the dude out too. He's like, it's my turn, remember? And he threw the guy out. So this is now the second guy who's gotten kicked out while he's in the middle of his business, and neither one of them seemed to object very much.
No, and I was a little surprised at a toy. It's not a good way to keep your clientele happy, but I guess at that point she didn't care.
Emergency situation, I guess.
Emergency situation, yeah. And this young working girl, clearly has some information they're looking for. That's the one to talk to, and she apparently is familiar with Hopwe headquarters. And
yeah, she worked for Longzhi as a cleaning lady at some point, and this is where Atoy says, "Do you know where this location is?" You can kind of see the girl's a little hesitant and sheepish. She doesn't want to look up. When Atoy says, "Look at me," then you kind of know that she knows.
Yeah, well, Atoy, she's the boss, and she's going to get what she wants out of you one way or the other. And she clearly does,
and she always does, right? If there's something to be found out, Atoy seems to have a way of getting information. And right from there, it cuts right away to Assam literally all out sprinting through the streets, and you know where he's headed now.
Yeah, he's heading to protect his sister, which has been really his only guiding principle through the show to this point. I mean, that's kind of what the show has really been all about him trying to protect his sister at all costs, even if it is at the cost of his own life. I mean, because we know one thing, that when he heads there, if he does end up confronting Bolo, how is he going to stop this? He can't. What can he really say? He has limited options, right? Because as far as Bolo knows, Assam's in Hopwe, and he's all, or at least all in, although Bolo doesn't really trust Assam. But that was my first thought. Like, what is he? He really has no play. He's got to lay it all on the line.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that, though, his initial instinct was to just take off and head to his sisters, right? And we also know that Bolo is already there. We got a shot of him now skulking about outside of the Longzhi safe house. Very quickly, the camera shifts to a shot of Penny one more time. You can see the torn look on her face, but that is just a brief peek, because we're back to Assam, who seems to have found where the house is, and we see Bolo making another kill of another guard, and then this is when things start to get hot.
Yeah, Bolo is going through them like hot butter. He's making
good way to put it.
or a hot knife through butter, I should say. He's going through them. We know that, or at this point, refresh my memory. At this point, do we know where Mei Ling and Long Z are?
Yeah, they are in their bedroom, and they're in the bed. This is where Mei Ling kind of stirs or wakes up, and her and Long Z both, and they sense that something is up at this stage.
Okay, yeah, I knew that. I didn't want to jump ahead.
No, you're
So
right
yeah,
on. You're right on.
okay, all right. So yeah, Mei Ling senses a disturbance in the force, if you will,
Yeah,
and she grabs a knife and she goes looking around,
yeah.
and
She
she
goes to check it
sees,
out. What's going on?
yeah, she sees one of her guards seemingly standing against the door, but that old trick, he's not standing against the door. He's got Bolo behind him, and they're all dead. And it's
Yeah,
Bolo, and now it's Mei Ling. Maybe not the confrontation we were looking for, but still kind of interesting. Very interesting. I was looking forward to this too.
yeah,
But she's physically, as mentally tough as she is, she's physically no match for Bolo, and
of, yeah. Of course not.
Bolo proceeds to sort of handle her, and
I like the way he says to her, "Hey, Mei Ling,"
yeah, very
like
friendly. Like,
this
hey,
like very jovial greeting at a non-jovial time. And her response is great. Her response was "fuck you."
kind of a little callback to Young June in the bar a few episodes back,
Right.
where he said, "Go fuck your." What did he say? Go fuck your
Fuck
mother.
your
Is that what
mother.
fuck your mother? Yeah, kind of a similar thing. But I actually think that Bolo did genuinely enjoy this. I think he was genuinely having fun here.
Oh, absolutely. He was very happy because he pretty much, first of all, his mission was to go kill her, right?
Yeah.
And she does try to defend herself. She slashes at him with the knife. She takes off trying to run. He chases her down, and very quickly, he's got her up against the wall. He's holding her around the neck. He is choking her out, and she is going under. The sleeper hold is taking effect on her. And this is where, like you said, you can see Bolo's face. He's taking great pleasure in this.
Yeah, he's a little sadistic. That much is clear. He doesn't care who he hurts. But I mean, then again, as a Hopwe member, yeah.
It's his job.
But
And he tells her,
but
sleep, go to sleep. And she's
yeah,
about to
yeah,
go to sleep. But
yeah. But our hero comes to the rescue. Assam comes in with a drop kick and
yeah,
knocks him out of the way.
you wanted to know what he was going to do. He comes flying in with a kick and sends Bolo across the room. Bolo doesn't even know what happened until he looks up and he sees who he sees.
Right, and this is where my first thought watching this scene, I said, "Well, Assam's cards are on the table now. At least with Bolo, this has to be a death match. There's no way. There's no way that Assam can turn around and he just has no choice because either he admits why he's there,
Right.
because I mean, otherwise, why would the average Hopwe member want to stop the killing of Mei Ling?
Right.
Why? You'd have no reason to.
No reason.
So now it's on. Now we right off the bat, we know we are in a death match now. And plus, I'm looking forward to it. So I'm taking on the Yellow Demon.
So two good points, right? That you just made there. Which is that now that Assam is essentially been found out by Bolo and what he's doing, you make the great point, which is the loser of this confrontation cannot live to talk about it. Right.
Right. And if you think about it, actually, it just occurred to me too that let's just say if theoretically the Bolo comes out on top, then Mei Ling, assuming she survived the choke out, she's in deep trouble too, assuming he doesn't just kill her right away. Because he could just, if he knows, he could just let her be and let the Long Z deal with her.
Yeah, well, that's true, but Bolo has a job to do, and his job is to kill Mei Ling, and now apparently he is faced with having to kill Assam first, and he's very fine with that idea because, as he said, I don't know what your deal is, but I haven't liked you from the start, and it's time for us to go. And they get into it right there in the Long Z safe house. Bolo and Assam are scrapping, and it's a well-matched battle. These guys are equals.
This was a really well choreographed fight scene. This was fun. Usually when you see fight scenes, or if it's just a blowout where it just beats the hell out of everyone, which those are fun too, but this is almost like a boxing main event. This is like Ali and Frazier, or this is like, yeah, we're now in the main event, and I was looking forward to it. And it was so well laid out. It was almost like watching ballet. It was really well done. It was a well choreographed fight, and it delivered on every level.
Absolutely, man. I mean, both guys took shots. Both guys gave shots in this fight, but it finally starts to go Assam's way. He gets Bolo on the ground, and with his knee and his arm, he kind of breaks Bolo's arm. It's a pretty crunching sound and obviously very painful because even Bolo screams out. And at this point, Bolo is now handicapped. He's down to, one arm, and he's getting a little bit desperate.
And I'm going to go with a little bit of an homage, but I think I'm kind of reaching on this one because I'm not entirely sure. I'll see what you think.
Go ahead.
This gave me echoes of the fight from, what was it, Return of the Dragon with Bruce Lee versus Chuck Norris after he broke his arms.
Yes.
And Chuck Norris is struggling.
In the Coliseum.
In the Coliseum, right? And Bruce Lee, a little different, but Bruce Lee looks at him, remember, and he just is like,
he was like,
don't do it.
Like Chuck Norris was like holding his one arm.
Yeah, yeah.
And to Chuck Norris's credit, he does the same thing Bolo does, which is, I've got pride. I'm finishing this fight. And with one arm and a hatchet, Bolo gives it his best, but it's certainly not good enough. And when Assam shoves him back, he stops. And you kind of know, like you said, that old, just like you said a little earlier, the guy was up against the wall and then he was dead, backing into the knife or backing up and dying. He turns and there's Mei Ling behind him with a knife in his back. So we've seen that in like a million shows and movies too, where a guy backs into a knife, not knowing who is the wielder.
Yeah, the not so loving arms of Mei Ling. And well, she got the kill, actually. It wasn't Assam.
Yeah, she's the one that finishes him, isn't it? She pulls the knife out of his back and jams it like right into like his trap back here, man. And that's got to be a painful, painful stab. And that is the end of Bolo. Shock.
Yeah, we've lost our first major, or is our first major character?
Yeah, he's a pretty cool character. I don't know that he's the major character, but he was like he was just like, the muscle of the upper echelon of the Hopway is gone.
Yeah, kind of like their version of Lee Young, I guess you could say. He's their Lee Young
to some degree. This is where now Mei Ling and Assam sort of embrace. And she looks at him and says, you got to get out of here. Just go. And he does take off. But I wrote this down in my notes in parentheses because now the lines are now blurred, Mike. Partially, why does Bolo have to die? He can't come back to tell the story. It's because now the lines are blurred for Assam. What side is he on at this point?
Right. And he's had that built-in conflict from the get-go. He's not truly Hopway, at least in his heart. He's there all about his sister, but he's caught in this conflict because they're in separate gangs. They're the Capulets and what was the other family in Romeo? Montagues, that was it. So it's the Capulets and the Montagues, and he's on the other side. Whether he truly believes it or not doesn't matter. He's on that. It doesn't matter that whether he believes in the Hopway cause or he hates the Long Z. He has to stick with them, at least for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's got no choice. And he and his sister, now we see at the end of the scene that he and his sister are still on opposite sides of the spectrum because, Bolo's not going to be around to tell a story. So right off the bat, I'm thinking that, okay, well, Bolo's dead. So Assam can go back and just pretend like nothing happened.
Correct. And I started thinking about exactly what you just said. And also it can now appear like Bolo died in the line of duty. Right. He didn't get to complete his mission. At least that's how we're seeing it right now. And although we're about to find out that picture is going to be twisted just a little bit because Mei Ling goes back upstairs and Long Z asks if she is okay. And she says to him, yes, I'm fine. It's over. Rest now. And she pulls out that knife, the same knife she used to kill Bolo. And you could see the understanding in Long Z's eyes as what she meant by it's over, rest now.
Yes. And we know that she's going to kill him and he knows that she's going to kill her. And she has to kill him because, she wants to take over and she has plans and he's only going to be in the way. And
like you said, he's kind of already known that she might be the one to do it.
But you see, it's this is more of a euthanasia than anything else because she cares about him. She's crying. He's upset, but he's kind of glad it's her. And he goes, I'm glad it's you. I think he said something to that effect. So this is Warrior's version of euthanasia.
Yeah, I found another juxtaposition where she kisses / kills him all within like kind of one swoop, right? She gives him like almost like goodbye kiss. And he says one last sentence to her. He says, they have no idea who they are dealing with, do they? And she says, they are about to find out. And that's when she shoves the knife into his stomach and he is dead. And that is the end of Long Z.
And she's crying, which
Yes.
shows that she does have some compassion, because I don't think we've really seen, well, we've seen a little bit of compassion towards her brother, when she told him to get out of town. Like she was looking out for her brother there.
But we haven't seen any of that compassion towards Long Z. For all we had known or gathered to this point was that she's just a ladder climber, and that she was using her position as his wife to establish her position at the top. And that may have been the case, but we also do see this reveal, which is there are some feelings for Long Z, and she is genuinely upset that he is dead, even though she had to kill him. But an interesting and eye-opening scene for sure. And this changes everything now, because now we can look at, from the Hop Way perspective, Bolo died but managed to kill Long Z. Because again, we don't know, the Hop Way don't know the part about Assam being there to stop all this. So the story gets twisted a little bit further, where Bolo even accomplished part of the mission in his heroic death.
And just as importantly, Long Z doesn't know, or the organization doesn't know exactly what happened, and they're not going to know what happened.
Right, because all this took place at the safe house with fewer guards. It wasn't like it happened in their headquarters for everyone to see. So the deception grows. There was already some, and it has increased, and we'll see just how far Mei Ling is willing to take this deception. But for now, we head back to Atoy's. She is working the floor. She's saying hi to some of her customers, some of the well-to-do ducks that frequent her establishment. She clearly knows these gentlemen by name. But then from afar, as she makes her way through, she sees the guy she bought the girl from earlier in the episode, and he's sitting there with one of the well-to-dos.
Yeah, the guy from the Kiwanis Club. He's saying
Better Businessman's Award winner.
Better Businessman's Award winner. He's clearly standing guard in front of a door, which can mean only one thing. That
wait, you're going ahead one scene. You're ahead. You're going ahead. This is where we first meet the rich guy, and they talk about what he's looking for first.
Oh,
right. You're jumping ahead a couple of scenes. This is where the guy who sold the Virgin to Atoy brings in a guy who's interested in buying the Virgin services, at least from Atoy.
Yeah, and again, we see that Atoy's got this sort of protective nature towards this young girl, and she's not about to let it happen. And she's not even necessarily concerned with customer service at this point, as it were.
The other thing that she asserts herself here is that she doesn't like this broker guy, or this guy coming in trying to be a broker of what she already owns. She said to him, dude, I paid you for the girl. You no longer have any rights to come into my place, right? And try to broker my product. And that's when he makes a mistake, I think. He stands up and questions her madamness, in a sense, because he says, what kind of brothel owner are you? Right?
That's right. Yes.
He questions her business acumen, essentially. And that's when she tells him that he should probably leave.
Yeah, which he should leave, because as we see, you don't mess with a toy. And so two things are going on. She doesn't like this guy, but she does care about the girl, and she doesn't care about, you're not going to do things your way in her place. This is her business. And look, who can blame her? It's her place of establishment. It's her organization. She's allowed to operate it as she wants.
Yeah, and this guy is obviously telling other people that he knows that have money, hey, there's some prime product available at Atoy's. Let me make that happen for you, and obviously for a cut of the fee. And like she said, you already made the money off of the girl. You're trying to make a share off of my end too now, potentially. So get out, just leave. So that's where the scene ends. We now see Officer Lee, and looks like he's doing laundry. He's got the washboard there in his room, and he's scrubbing, I think, his work shirt. And that's when Bill shows up, and he comes to question Lee about his past.
And we get Lee's backstory here. And apparently he was involved with a former slave, a black woman, an interracial relationship in the Deep South during the Civil War. generally frowned upon.
Generally,
Generally, yeah,
General Lee, frowned upon.
General Lee himself frowned upon it.
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently his family, they had a good relation with this other freed family. They were freed former slaves, and he developed a relationship with the daughter or one of the women,
Right.
and it was love. They would sneak away, they would make love, and he clearly deeply cared for her. But times being what they were, it wasn't something that could be publicly known. So one day after a lovemaking session, we flash back and they're in a barn and they used to time it where she would leave first and he'd wait a little while, wait a beat so that they didn't draw suspicion. And they didn't. But she's walking along a path as she left a few minutes ahead of him and she runs into two of his family members and they proceed to try and assault her.
Right. Right.
And
They
she fights
accost, they're
back.
his cousins and they're drunk, I think Lee says, and they were finally on to him and his girlfriend.
Right. And they accosted her. And Lee tragically shows up just as they kill her. So now he's enraged and he grabs, what was it, a sickle?
No, he
And
shoots. No, actually, he has a shotgun first. Those guys had the sickle, and he shoots the first one. He shoots the first one, and his telling of the story is, I only had one in the chamber in that shotgun, and that's when he said he grabbed the sickle and finished off the other.
Yeah, so now you see Lee's point, and you're still sympathetic towards him. He's still, for my money, he's still one of the moral centers of the show. You go, Lee.
Yeah, it was I guess a moral killing in a sense. Back when Bill showed him the wanted poster and it said, "Is there something you want to tell me? I trusted you. I trusted you with my family. Start talking." And the first thing Lee says is, "Oh, it makes sense that there would be posters. It's not a good likeness of me." Like he tries to make light of it, and Bill is not interested in any of that. And that's when Lee goes into his story about what exactly happened. After these murders, after the killings, rather, I'm not going to call them murders either. Lee tells Bill that he left town immediately and that he still feels like he did the right thing, regardless of how the law may look upon him. And because Bill asks him, you brought up the question earlier. It's kind of a weird vocation for a wanted man to go on the run and become a cop. And Bill says to him, so I guess you becoming a cop is some sort of penance then, is it? And that's when Lee says, for what? They had it coming to them. I don't feel the need to be penitent about anything.
Right.
So Lee's position is still clear as well, which is, hey man, I did this thing, but there was a good reason. But then in comes the bounty hunter with a few of Bill's cops.
Right. And we see Lee realizes or thinks he's been set up.
He's been betrayed.
He's been betrayed and he feels betrayed by Bill. And
calls Bill a bastard.
He calls Bill a bastard. And now we're like, okay, well, Bill needs money. So we were kind of expecting this. And the bounty hunter's there with three cops. There was 2 or 3 cops. Was it 3?
Yeah, it was 3 cops, and Lee's on the defensive now. He's got himself a knife, and he's pointing it at whoever he's got to point it towards to sort of try to defend himself.
And then the bounty hunter says something to the effect of, "This is not going to go the way you think it's going to go." And then Bill interjects, "You're right about that." And then the other cops proceed to beat the hell out of him.
Yeah, it's interesting when Bill says, when he says that, the bounty hunter says, "This ain't going to end the way you think it is." Bill does say, "You're right about that." And he nods his head. And that's when they've turned the tables on this bounty hunter. The cops clobber him, right? They beat him up, not total severely, but a couple of good shots to subdue him, take his gun away and knock him down. Enough to send a message, I think, here.
Yeah, and he tells him, if you ever come back to San Francisco, you're not going to leave. You're not. It's not going to go well for you. So don't come back to San Francisco. Don't ever come this way again.
Right. Put him on a train and clean him up, get him on a train and get him the hell out of here. You got the rest of the country to go ply your trade. Not here.
We see Bill's got a little bit of redemption now. From last week, he killed a man, but now he's actually saved a life, and he saved the life of a good man. So it's kind of like Bill's had a little bit of a redemptive moment, and we see the bond between Lee and Bill has strengthened even more. But Bill, he just needed to. Well, actually, it was a very funny interplay between
Bill and Lee.
Between Bill and Lee, and it kind of reminded me of the scene last week in the bar when young June had the gun and Assam turned and said, "You had that this whole time."
Yeah,
it kind of reminded me of. He goes, you could have told me what you were doing. He goes, "Oh, what would be the fun in that?"
You could have at least tipped me off. Where's the
Yeah,
fun in
yeah.
that? He goes. I wrote that down too. It was
Yeah.
Bill is very good at delivering some of those one-liners, similar to the one he said to Assam when he says it would take more than three, wouldn't it? And he had another line or two just like that, and he delivers it with that tongue-in-cheekiness that really, really makes it real, I think. But Bill also explains, I couldn't tip you off because I had to hear it from you first. Right. That was really what it was. He needed to know the story because whatever Lee told him was really what was going to determine how Bill and the other three cops reacted towards and with that bounty hunter. So once they got their satisfaction, which was Lee is on the up and up, and like Bill said to him, even though you may have taken the law into your own hands the wrong way, you were still doing the right thing and you shouldn't have to pay for that. By the way, any more secrets I need to know about? He says to Lee.
Now, what I thought was interesting, and I understand why they did it in the show, is that they could have very well been offended that Lee had been laying with a non-white woman, and they could have actually gone the other way too, because we've seen that Bill is clearly racist against Asians. So, and I would imagine in the late 19th century, in any part of the country, probably wouldn't going to be amenable to a black and white couple being involved. So that could have gone either way.
That's a good point. And, you didn't see anyone take offense to that. Bill didn't seem to have any problems with Lee's choices either. He does warn Lee, though, this is not going to be the last guy looking to try to cash in on this bounty. You understand that, right? And Lee, nods his head. He exhales a little bit of, you can see the relief on his face for the moment, but he also understands that Bill is correct. He still thanks Bill, and Bill does say, I owed you one.
Yeah, and he did. He guarded his family all night, and I'd imagine that probably factored into a little bit of the decision. But this scene really strengthened the bond between those two. Probably, I'd say we saw the relationship bond strengthening here over blood. Like obviously between Assam and Mei Ling was another one where you could see that they bonded a little bit because he saved her life, and well, in this case, Bill saved his life. So a little bit of a correlation there, I think.
Yeah, and I think that we're seeing another bond between Atoy and the new girl because she saved her life in a sense as well. So there's a lot of saving going on in this absolutely wild episode. We now head back to Atoy's. She's a big central character in this episode this week, and she's looks like she's like in her office and she's talking real estate. They're looking over a map, her and a guy we've never seen before, a duck guy, and clearly from the conversation these two are partners in some land deals and they're looking to acquire more.
Yeah, well, Atoy at the end of the day is a businesswoman and she's an entrepreneur, and we know that she was a real life character who was very successful in real life, and Atoy is in real estate, right? And so she's no dummy. So that I like that. I love these little droplets of actual history that they throw in there. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But we see that she's looking to expand her empire, but well, then that scene kind of ends, and well, now we see she's out in the open area again.
Yeah. Before you get to that, I just want to focus in a little bit more on this relationship because they do spell out their roles here. This business deal, you wonder like why is she doing business with this guy? Why is he doing business with her? And what's turning out to be here is that this guy's the front man. Atoy's got the cash, and this guy's doing all of the deals because clearly no one's going to be selling any land to a Chinese person. So this guy's acting on behalf as like the beard, so to speak, for Atoy. And obviously they're sharing in the spoils because they actually toast two partners, right?
Right.
They express their appreciation for one another here. So clearly they have a good deal going. Now we get to what you were saying, which is we hear some screaming coming from another part of the brothel. And Atoy goes to investigate quickly.
Can I just actually backtrack one second? Because thank you for bringing that up. This is what I meant to say. He reminded me of her version of Damon. That's her Damon.
All right. Except that they're not doing anything necessarily nefarious, right? Like Bill getting fronted money to gamble with.
But Damon could do things that the Longs he couldn't do, and this guy can buy land that she couldn't do. So
that's a good point.
That was actually, I wrote that down. That was going to be my take on this scene. So thank you for bringing that up. I meant to say that.
Good. I'm glad that I backtracked it because that is an excellent point. But now, once they toast to partnership, we hear some screaming coming from somewhere else in the brothel. A toy goes to investigate. She quickly draws a blade like out of her hair. I think she had it like, where the girls usually have like those sticks in the bun at the back of their hair. She pulled out like a blade. And who's standing in the hallway there near the door? You alluded to this scene earlier. It's the hooker salesman, for lack of a better term, and she is approaching him angrily, and he's
the Rotary Club,
the Rotary Club member, right? And he sees her coming, and he sees her anger.
Yeah, and well, we find out quickly what's going on. Apparently, he has negotiated some sort of deal for the new girl, and he's kind of saying like, wait a minute," and well, she's not waiting a minute.
Now, hear me out. He doubled his price, is what he says.
Right, and so she pins his hand to the wall with a knife.
That's great because his hand is up, and she just like takes that blade that she had, and she stabs across and sticks his hand right into the wall, man. And he screams in some pretty serious pain. And we've already known she's a badass, but boy, this is a pretty badass move too.
Yeah. And once again, we see a customer interrupted.
But is this guy a customer? Because I marked it down now. She opens the door and we see that creep that he was trying to sell the girl to earlier on top of her, trying to accost her. He's not in a full state of dress. He's kind of half dressed, and he turns in horror as the door is open, right? When you're being interrupted, like if you're in the bathroom or something and someone opens the door, he had that same kind of look on his face, and a toy jumps right in there and rushes him and grabs him off of her.
Yeah, because she's not having it, and she tosses him out.
Well, before she tosses him out, he exclaims, "But I paid for her. I thought that what's his name explained everything to you." And a toy does something very telling here. She still has that blade in her hand, or a different one anyway, because the other guy's hand was still pinned on the wall. And she puts the blade to his face, and she slices him very thinly down like the cheek. And when he says, "I thought he explained," she slices him and says, "Explain face to wife." And then she tosses him out, and he takes off.
Right.
That's when she leaves the room, and as she walks past the Rotary Club president, I love that we're calling him that. She pulls that knife out of his hand. We see a couple fingers fall to the ground. It's pretty graphic.
Yeah, he leaves there with a few less digits than he walks in with. But
get him out of here, she says.
Yeah, they both got to leave alive, which is more than some people get. So I guess I should be grateful for that. But
I'm surprised she didn't kill him, but maybe because she still has a need for him. That's the only reason why she didn't kill him.
Not to maybe out in the open area of her own business, she probably would want something like that to go down, I would imagine. Yeah, but yeah, he probably is still of some value to her. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll be negotiating better rates now thanks to his insolence, his trying to go behind her back. I mean, really, how much more slimy do you have to be when when is enough not enough, right?
What's this world coming to when you can't find an ethical human trafficker?
We now switch back to, looks like the mayor's house. There's Penny. She's still, I don't know if she's wrestling with it anymore. I think she's prepping now, and she pours a drink. The last time she poured a drink for the mayor, it had some powder in it that knocked him out cold. And it's a similar situation to that time that she closed the door on him. He's back in bed. He's fully clothed in his pajamas, not expecting any marital bliss to happen, reading his newspaper. Penny sees him. She downs the drink and goes over to him in the bed.
Right. And we know that she has taken the drink. And so clearly she's setting herself up. The only way she can do this is to be drugged to the point of unconsciousness.
She needed to at least take some edge off.
Yeah. So clearly he repulses her to this level. And she does, again, what she has to do to get done what she has to get done. So she's going to give him some sticky.
It's funny when she sits in the bed at first, he's obviously surprised. He's like, "What are you doing?" He says to her.
And he's got some papers. He's going over some, notes. Yeah,
this doesn't happen in their house. She does not climb into bed with him under any circumstance. And you could see it in his eyes. He's very leery of her motivations here. But she lets him know right away what he wants, right? Or what she wants. And so he wants that too now. And he like kind of sort of undresses and he climbs on and gets right in there. Like there's not a warm up, there's not anything. He must have already been like full staff because he was right to work. And you saw what was essentially selfish, passionless sex. There was no love making here. There was no tenderness between a husband and a wife. There was a guy taking advantage of the situation of his wife for some reason unbeknownst to him, willing to finally give him some sticky, and he takes it while she takes it too. Horrified, I might add.
I think young June probably has shown more tenderness towards some of the hookers that he has been with than this scene had.
Yeah, and I would say that lack of tenderness is reciprocal. It's on both sides. She's not willing to give him any tenderness either. She just wants to fulfill the duties that her father not so nicely spelled out to her at their dinner earlier in the episode. So the mayor is getting what he's been wanting. We'll find out if it helps Mr. Mercer end up getting what he wants. Politics and family have a way of not quite working out. So this is going to be interesting for sure. We're back in Chinatown, and it's not a nice scene. Bolo is hanging from on high. A message sent from the Long Z to the Hop Way. So they bring him in to Father June, who was in the middle of some kind of meeting. And Father June wants to know what the hell happened here.
Yep. And he also commends Bolo, just like you said. Bolo was a true soldier. He goes, I have no doubt that he carried out his duty. He fought to the end. So Bolo died. He got about as good as you could in death. He died with honor. He got full praise from Father June.
He gets credit for the kill, which he didn't kill, by the way.
And that's where we get that little bomb drop because Assam's there. Because Assam knew when he left that Long Z was alive, and he knew that Bolo was dead.
Right.
So something else. So Assam, besides us, is the only one that knows, at least in the Hop Way.
Right, because the guy who brought Bolo's body in says he killed Long Z, but the bitch survived. And that's when Assam knows that obviously he knew his sister was alive when he left, but this is when the Long Z revelation happens. And Father June doesn't like it. He says it very clearly. They want a war? Let's give them one.
Yep. And so now that has set us up for future conflict. And
we know what's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, we know what's coming. And well, now Assam is locked in. What is he going to do?
Wow. I mean, it's everybody's painted into a corner in this show at some time or other. And this is one of those corners for Assam. Someone else who's painted herself into a corner is Mei Ling. And we're back at Hop Way headquarters. And we see Mei Ling with Li Yang. First time we're seeing him in the episode, and he tells her that he regrets not being there to protect her and Long Z. And he notices she's wearing a scarf to cover some of the strangulation marks that were left from Bolo's attempt. I wonder, is she hiding it from everybody else? Is she hiding it so people don't know Bolo almost got her? I'm not sure. Or is it just one of those things like many battered women we've seen, you know, like on TV or in the news, like they kind of will try to conceal their injuries at the hands of someone else. I'm not sure what that's about.
I don't think that would be it. I don't think that she would be worried about what people think or perception, or certainly no one's going to think she's weak. I think it's probably, and also don't see why she would have to hide the fact that Bolo did attack her, because she could pretty much tell almost 95% of the truth, I would think, and it probably still wouldn't hurt her cause in any way, shape, or form. So that's actually interesting, because I don't know why she would wear the scarf, but maybe it was, I guess maybe for whatever reason, she didn't want them to know that Bolo attacked her, but for whatever reason.
If that's what the motivation is, yeah.
But she tells Li Yang, she goes, don't worry about it. You were exactly where I needed you to be. But we know now that has a double meaning. And we also kind of learned that, well, sort of Mei Ling probably had an idea what was going to happen that evening, because she didn't want Bolo there.
Because she knew didn't that want Bolo. Li Yang there, you mean?
I'm sorry. Yeah, she didn't want Li Yang there, because Li Yang probably would have stopped it, because we see that Li Yang is one of the fiercest scrappers. She wanted him out of the picture, because that was the night that one way or the other Long Z was going to die.
Right.
And she proceeds to, yeah, thank you. And then she tells Li Yang what she did. So as she tells him, I'm like, okay, Li Yang, I always took him as a fiercely loyal guy to a fault. What is he going to do? Is he going to lash out? no, he hugs her. He's all on board.
Well, it's funny when she confesses to having been the one who killed Long Z, his face, you're not sure. Like, is he like, what? But he's like you said, he's all in. He like kisses her with passion, like, you did this for us, kind of thing.
Right.
Like, so he's on board. He knew that the time was coming as well. And obviously this was something they must have talked about in the past, right? So now she's got his approval in a sense, Li Yun's approval, and she from that point comes out to meet her public, right? It's her first time now as the new head of Long Z to address the other members of the Tang. And this is where now, when she addresses them, Mike, this is where we get the title of the episode, because she tells them a story her father shared with her as a kid, which is the tale of the tiger and the fox, which is essentially a lesson in fear.
Yeah, the fox was trying to, the tiger confronted the fox, and the fox tried to explain to the tiger that he actually was one of the scariest people in town, and they're walking through town and everyone was afraid, but they were actually afraid of the tiger. So the fox was in effect borrowing the tiger's strength and fear. And she said
Right.
that basically, I think she said something to the effect that, well, there's a lot of foxes around here, but we're all about to become tigers.
Right. And Long Z was the tiger, but now that he's gone, essentially, this was a war declaration by Mei Ling, just as we saw a war declaration from Father June. And this is when the scene cuts to both sides now, Hop, Wei, and Long Z. They're both kniving up in a sense, right? They're arming up, they're sharpening their blades, they're getting their armaments together, and they are getting ready. Things are getting tense, Mike.
Yep, they grab their Ronco knives and they are going to the streets.
Ronco.
How you like that, huh? And they're getting ready for battle. And this kind of reminded me of another movie. Remember Gangs of New York, when they all sort of lined up, I guess, in the
Across
beginning.
from each other, yeah.
It reminded me of that. You had the two opposing gangs on either side facing off, and there was that moment of pause, and everything was quiet, and it just building the tension perfectly. And then next thing you know,
Right
they all
before you,
turn.
right before
Oh,
you go there, right before you get to the showdown on the street, Mike, I want to backtrack one little bit. When they're on their way to this confrontation, young June and Assam are walking together, and young June is telling Assam, you haven't been here long enough to know what the landscape was kind of like, but we can feel the changes happening underneath us right now. Everything is shifting here. So the wheels having been put into motion are outside of the normal day-to-day of what's been happening status quo wise in Chinatown, and now things are about to get shaken up. And this is where the scene you described, where they turn down one street and they're confronted from across from them, is Long Z mini army and the Hopway mini army, and they are just staring each other down, and it is quiet. The music, I made a note here, by the way, and I haven't talked about it yet, but the music in this show, aside from the theme song, during the fight scenes is awesome, because it's contemporary music, like rock kind of, to today, as opposed to being like music of the time of like the 1870s or something. So it gives these fight scenes, or about to happen fight scenes, or these tense moments, some really great energy because of the intensity of the music that they're using. The soundtrack to this show is awesome, and we haven't given that enough credit to this point. And the music
I love it.
Yeah, the music helps build up that tension, and we are now focused on young June's face, and he is staring down, and then exactly, I wrote that. And these two armies, they charge each other right in the middle of the street, and the screen goes to black.
Yep.
But the sound doesn't go to black.
No, you're hearing the clanging of knives.
We hear the blades. We hear the blades clanging against each other, and you just wish you could see what was going on, but the episode ends.
Yeah, you're gonna have to wait.
Come on. I don't want to wait, dude. Can't we do episode 8 right now?
Big tease.
Wow. Mike, this episode delivered, like you said, at our opening here today, just totally shifted the playing field, and sort of reorganize the hierarchies a bit as this story takes a turn towards the season 1 culmination.
Yeah, we see the changing of the guard with Long Z. We see relationships strengthening between several major characters.
Yeah.
So it's changing of the guard. The air's changing, and then we get the final sort of cliffhanger. So this, I think, was the most pivotal episode of the season so far. To me, this was the one that kind of amped things up, and we are in preparation for the next episode, which I'm
And
looking forward to.
this one was really good. You know, the spot that Assam is in right now is, it's like, it's killing me. You know what I mean? Like, what side is he on? I asked the question earlier, and you wonder, like, how is he going to be able to play both sides of the fence? I think that's like what I'm really curious about now.
Well, let me ask you this: who would you rather be right now? Would you rather be Assam in this situation? Would you rather be Lee with his situation, or would you rather be, I don't know, maybe Atoy?
Out of the three, Atoy's in the best spot right now, right? Because she's got a booming business and she's got lots of business deals and seems like she's got complete control of her situation. Whereas Lee has it hanging over his head now that we know he's a wanted man and other bounty hunters are essentially going to come looking for him. That's what Bill says, and it's probably accurate. So, I mean, Assam has got it the worst. Assam's got it the worst because he is caught in the middle of this, directly in the middle of this war. And he's hiding a secret. Only one other person, well, two people, Mei Ling herself and Atoy, know that she's his sister.
Well, Lee Young knows too.
Well, I guess Li Young knows. Right. Yeah.
And does Chow know? I'm not sure.
Chow only knows that he speaks English. Chow doesn't know about the sister part yet. And by the way, no Chow in this episode, Mike. That disappointed me. He's one of my favorite characters, and it's always a letdown when you don't see him.
Yeah, I missed him. I like to see him in Leary. We didn't see Leary either in this episode, did we?
Right, no Leary, but there was so much happening. You saw a lot more Atoy than you have in the last few episodes, and I guess they kind of gave Leary a little bit of a rest. But I think now, as Mr. Mercer's business situation possibly might be moving forward thanks to Penny's acquiescence, maybe we will see.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, maybe we will see Leary now be interjected back into the story next week. We're going to find out. Only 3 episodes to go in season 1, Mike, and I'm looking forward to getting back at it with you next week.
Oh, me too. I can't wait. This is so exciting. If you have just started watching the show, then you are in for a treat, and it only gets better from here.
I kind of wish that I have not seen the entirety of the show as we're doing this series, but it's okay because it allows us to kind of explain things a little bit cautiously as well to people without giving stuff away.
Yeah, as I found out, and I think I speak for you too. I've learned new things watching these episodes this time because I've already seen them. I mean, I've seen them multiple times before we started the show, but now that I'm watching for this, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm catching that, and it's really awesome. This show, it delivers. It is one of those things. Truly, you discover something new every time you watch it. So I've been having a great time.
Yeah, I'll say that I've probably not analyzed episodes of a show as deeply as I have for this thing that we're doing here. So it's really helping me. I feel like I've gotten better at like understanding like a director's motivations or an actor's choices a little bit from trying to delve deeper into some of these scenes. And so
absolutely
a lot of the stuff that I've picked up or shared along the way about the show are
absolutely
recent revelations to me. It's not like I've had these things in my head for the first 3 times I watched these episodes. They're coming to me now as we view it with a critic's eye, so to speak.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And it has been so rewarding, and it's made me a better watcher of television overall, because now I find I'm kind of looking at things a different way, and I have a sort of a different perspective. And again, like you said, like an actor's choice or a director's choice or even a writer's choice for that matter. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I do too. And I'll leave it there. This was another great week. We'll do it again next week. If you're enjoying our work and you're enjoying this show, Diced Onion, please hit like, please hit subscribe, set your notifications so that you get an alert every time. Yes, every time we post a show, you will be one of the first to know. And hopefully if people who have not seen the entirety of the series are following along with us kind of in order, I hope that our insights and our revelations help them connect to those in a lot faster way than it took us to get to those points. So again, please comment, please share, and tell everybody. But until next week, we'll see you guys.
Take care.
Bye. We're out.